Welcome. We're going to do a quick live on the home selling process. Give me one quick second. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. So let me try to confirm that real quick, and we'll get going. Um, as you know, the interest rates dropped a little bit, actually twice in the last few months, but the common misconception is when the feds drop the interest rate, that may not always translate into the housing market, and I'll explain why in a bit. That Fed interest rate drop, that's really a bank to bank lending situation. That's not necessarily the lending from a private individual trying to lend from a bank. So when the Federal Reserve drops the interest rate, that helps banks get money, but that may not always translate into you getting money from the bank. All right, so we are live. The audio is working. Just verify that. Let's see if we need any lighting or anything else like that. All right, good to go. I'm gonna check a couple things over here. Let's see. It's the step-by-step home buying process is what we're going to talk about. Also, we're going to address whether or not you should sell your home in 2026. You know, it's kind of hard to decide. You know, you don't want anybody to tell you, yes, sell your house, or no. There are a lot of factors that you need to consider that we're going to talk about, all right? So without further ado, step one, if you're considering, let's say in the spring of 2026, you may want to sell your home. I would say like right now, you should probably have done it already, but most people do it anyway. They kind of repair or clean their house for the holiday season. That's actually why it's kind of like a good time in the spring for people to sell, because you know you already did the holiday cleaning. Then back in the day, that's what's called a spring cleaning event. Spring cleaning event is when people normally would clean their houses right before the springtime, just to get all the winter dirt out of their homes, right? Because you know in the wintertime it's snowing, you're walking in and out. So in the springtime, you just kind of clean the house up for, you know, the summer and all of that. So sometimes people do holiday cleaning, which is preparing your home for sale, right? Um, but what you want to do as a homeowner is to periodically clean your home, do some deep cleaning. Deep cleaning, scrub the baseboards, do minor repairs. This kind of makes it very easy on you when it's time to sell, to where you don't have to do major repairs, right? So if you're planning on selling, let's say in the spring, you want to start doing some deep cleaning right now. You also want to do some repairs, you know, slowly. If you think the bathroom needs overhauled, you go ahead and do that. It's just better to keep your home up to date. You know, sometimes when people purchase a home, they always say, I'll do this, do that, do this, but 9 times out of 10, only a select few actually get those repairs done. You know, some people just move in and life happens and they just forget to do it, or life just happens to where they don't do any repairs. But I recommend, first step is do some deep cleaning and get the house repaired. Um, Even before that first step, what I would say is even a better one. It's not always recommended. It kind of can be costly. Not a lot, just a few $100s really. You're selling the home for about a $500,000, maybe it's going to cost you $600 to $700 or so on an inspection. This is as a seller if you want to get the most for your house, right? Um, Obviously, some people sell if they're in foreclosure. Some people sell because they have to move right now. Um, just give me one. Yeah. So there are various factors why people sell their homes. Give me one quick second. Yes, there are various factors why people sell their homes. So things may vary, right? But if you are planning on selling because you just want to upgrade, you take your time, you repair periodically as you go. Um, I would say get an inspection unless you're very handy. If you're a handy person, then you can kind of tell what's wrong and then you can inspect the home yourself. But it's for peace of mind, get a professional opinion, hire an inspector to come look at the property and tell you what may be an issue from a buyer's perspective. So you know all the things that this can be a double-edged sword, because if you do get the inspection and you see some huge cost and you don't want to disclose them, that's illegal. You have to disclose any material defects to potential buyers legally. You know, at least in the state of Maryland, you have states that are caveat emptor states, which means really it's like a buyer beware almost. The buyers, the proof of the condition of the home is really on the buyer. But for most states, especially in the state of Maryland, if you know about a problem, legally you have to disclose it. So some sellers may say, I don't even want to know. I'm not going to get an inspection. And if I don't know I don't know, it doesn't hurt me, right? But if you want to sell something and have peace of mind, you get an inspection, you see all the major issues, you get them fixed, right? Step two would be, I would say, emergency. Okay. I was reading some of the comments. Step two, I would say, get an appraisal, right? An appraisal is like a professional opinion, right? Appraisers have pretty high requirements. For one, they have to have a 4-year degree. So college graduate, not necessarily in anything relating to real estate, but a college degree is required, extensive classes. So an appraiser can go into a house and tell you exactly how much it costs, and the bank would go with that appraiser's number. So if you don't want to spend that money on an appraisal, what you can do is do a CMA, which is a comparative market analysis, and you can get that from your realtor. But in essence, what that is, it kind of compares apples to apples. So you look within a 1 mile radius or so, depending on the density of the home. If it's in the city, for instance, in Washington D.C., you may not even need to do a 1 mile radius. You can do a half a mile, a quarter-mile radius, right? But if you're in a rural area, sometimes you even have to go 2 miles out to just get a comp. You know, comp is like so. For instance, you got different styles of homes. You got a Cape Cod, colonial, traditional, ranch, rambler kind of. So you don't want to compare a ranch with a Cape Cod, or split level with a colonial. You want to compare colonials to colonials, apples to apples. So whatever type of home you have, you want to find a similar type of home, like a colonial to a colonial. If you got 3 bedrooms, you can compare it to a 4-bedroom house. You just need to know how much an extra bedroom will cost. Then you subtract or you add that, right? If you have 2 baths and the home that sold down the street has 3 bathrooms, you need to factor how much would a bathroom cost, right? So that's a CMA. A CMA is a comparative market analysis, pretty much just comparing properties in the area that are very similar to yours that either are on the market or that sold within a good decent amount of time. I would say 6 months is long. I like to do 3 months, but sometimes you can't find anything. You kind of have to extend the search out to like 6 months. And as I mentioned, sometimes you can't find anything in your immediate radius, so you need to go a little further out. But in essence, you need to find out what homes just like yours are going for, and get a CMA. That's the cheap way to go about it. You can get one for free from your real estate agent, or you can kind of do one yourself just by going on Zillow, Redfin, these websites to see how much homes that look like yours are selling for, and you can kind of price yours in that ballpark, right? But to get a more professional opinion, you probably want to get an appraisal done, right? So the appraiser will give you a dollar amount that your home is valued at. Then step number 3, you want to calculate your closing cost. Um, so here's the thing: unless your house is paid off completely when you do sell your home, first thing that's going to happen is the Uncle Sam needs his money. The government gets paid with all the taxes first, transfer taxes, real estate taxes, all those type of taxes, right? Second is the lender would take their money. So if you sold the house for 500 grand, but you still owe 300,000 there, after you pay the taxes, next person that gets paid is the lender. Then you have to pay a realtor fee, title fee if you choose to go with a real estate agent, and then you keep the rest, right? So what I always create for sellers is what's called a seller's net sheet. It gives the sellers a view of how much they potentially can take home after sale, right? So for instance, I would ask a seller, how much do you owe on your loan, and they say, oh, I owe 200,000. So now I give them the average closing cost, which would include transfer taxes, title fees, and the real estate agent commission. In the ballpark, nothing is etched in stone except for transfer taxes that you can calculate, and some fees from the title company, and like an admin fee that is, what the company standard may be. Commissions are negotiable, right? So you can negotiate that. But I give them a ballpark and say, okay, maybe 20,000, 30 grand might be all your closing costs. And after you pay those closing costs, and you also have paid the lender, your take home would be, what did we say? You owe 300 grand. Your take home would be about maybe 170,000. You see what I'm saying? So you want to calculate your closing cost and get what's called a seller's net sheet. So after all these expenses, as a seller, I'm going to net X amount of dollars, right? All right. So from there, the next step number 4, would be to either find a realtor, I would say, or do a FISBO. Decide on whether you're going to find a realtor or whether you're going to do a FISBO. So in a market like this that we are in right now, I'm not selling myself. Well, obviously I'm a salesperson. It would be good to get the business, but that's not what this is about. This is just to inform sellers. And truthfully speaking, right now it's not a seller's market. The market has kind of pivoted from where you can list a house and get 50, 10, 20, sometimes even $100,000 above asking. You get a bunch of offers. Right now, if you don't price your home properly, if you don't kind of stage it, it's not well renovated, homes tend to sit a little longer right now. It's leaning more towards the buyer side. Reason being, there was a shock in the market because we were kind of used to, for a brief period during the COVID years, and maybe a year or so after COVID, the 2 point something interest rates, sometimes even 3 or 4. But now we even got as high as 8% during the course of this year. We're now down to the 5, 6s, and sometimes 7s, but that has slowed down the market, right? And we don't have that many buyers anymore in the market. So now it's a buyer's market. You know, sellers' homes tend to sit a lot longer. If the homes are not properly priced or renovated, they may tend to sit a lot longer, or the seller may need to drop the price a lot more than they intended to do in the beginning. So I would say find a realtor because of the market conditions. It doesn't mean you can't do it for sale by owner, right? I still see homes going for sale by owner, but if you're going to do a FISBO, then price it properly and renovate it, right? Because if not, you may need just a realtor to actually be able to market the house and get it out there to the most buyers as possible. You just get more exposure when you do a realtor. It just is what it is because FISBOs are not listed on the MLS. The MLS is called it's an acronym for the multiple listing service. That's where when a listing agent, a realtor posts the house for sale there, it automatically gets dispersed to all the real estate websites like the Zillows, the Redfins, the Realtor.com. So you get maximum exposure. Every agent, when they search on the MLS, they can see homes in that area and how much they're going for. FISBOs don't pop up there, you know. So if you do it for sale by owner, you are losing eyeballs. That's just what it is. But based on your neighborhood, if you're in a hot neighborhood, you may not need an agent. That's just the truth. If your neighborhood is highly desired, and if you have a lot of just buyers that want to buy in that neighborhood, and your home is very well renovated, and also you price it accurately, you may not need an agent. But let's say in a challenging market like we are in right now, I would recommend sellers get an agent because of the MLS factor. You just get more exposure, right? So step 5 would be you either got to decide if you're going to move out or if you're going to be in the house while it's on the market. Some people have the money or the situation demands where they have to move. If they got to move but they haven't sold their house, then it's vacant. A vacant house is kind of easier to sell because more people can view it. But the downside to a vacant home sometimes, not in every neighborhood, but let's say squatters, right? If some squatter sees that your house is vacant, they can just kind of go in there, then it becomes a whole hassle to get them out, right? But other than that, I would say moving out gives you a better option to get more buyers in the house. You give buyers more access to your property. Or you can declutter it. If you don't want to go pay for storage or moving expenses until you close, you kind of want to declutter the house. Just depersonalize the house. Nobody wants to see all your, you know, family photos, dishes, and cups, and you know, things all in the kitchen countertop. You want to make it just like a showroom. That's the best way to put it. You want to make your home appear as though it was a furniture showroom, you know, where they got chairs, some flowers, a few paintings. That's really how you want your home to look. You want to just take everything that's personal to you out of there. You just want to kind of give a buyer a feel for what the house would look like if they move in, and you know, they see a bad furniture, kind of get an understanding of how the layout can be. They can picture themselves living in that home, but you don't want to make the home to the point where, you know, it has all your stuff in there. So just declutter and depersonalize the home. And then step 6, if you are going to declutter and you're not going to move out, as you depersonalize it, you kind of stage it. And staging is, once again, I use the showroom analogy. You want it to look like a furniture store showroom, right? Bed, bed sheet, pillows, nice pillows, um, lamps, just basic things in there. So what they say is you want to take away about 70% of what you have in the house. You want to keep it as basic as possible. Just chairs, flowers, just make it look like a showroom. You can always Google staging pictures and see what staging a home looks like. And the numbers just show that homes that are staged sell for higher than homes that are not staged. And there's also another misconception, going back to step number 4, whether you're going to find a realtor or you're going to do it for sale by owner. Most people think that when they do it for sale by owner, they're going to save from paying realtor commissions. And I'm not saying it to advertise because I'm a realtor, but the fact is, homes that use realtors on average sell for more than those that don't. People even net more because sometimes the sellers, you're a seller, but you're going against a buyer who's represented by a professional. So unless you're very savvy, it's not an even playing field. It's like going to court sometimes and representing yourself, and this defendant or your accuser is with a high-powered lawyer, so you're at a disadvantage. The same goes for selling your house. I mean, it's a huge transaction, probably one of the biggest you'll ever make. So why would you put yourself at a disadvantage? So if you're not going to use an agent, at least have a friend that's an agent. Do a lot of research so you don't get lowball offers, right? You don't get used and abused in the market. That's just the truth of the matter. On average, homes that sell with a realtor, believe it or not, sell for higher than the for sale by owners. Anyway, stage the home. So we have done our necessary repairs. We've done a CMA on appraisal. We calculated all our closing costs. You got your seller's net sheet. You know how much you want the home to give you, how much you want to make from the transaction. You want to then you found your realtor. You decided, okay, I'm going to do this on my own. You then declutter the house, you stage it, or you move out completely. Now the house is vacant. I recommend you stage the home because, as I mentioned, homes that are staged sell for more than homes that are not staged. Then you put the home on the market. The way you put the home on the market really is by signing a listing agreement with the realtor, or just by going on Zillow, Redfin, different websites, sometimes even Facebook Market, just different places, and putting your house up for sale. And you do for sale by owner, a nice description. You can use AI to help you come up with a good way to describe what you would like to convey to buyers, because AI is kind of good. As a listing agent myself, I have all these thoughts in my mind as to how I want to phrase it. I type it and then I put it into like an AI chatbot, and it gives me something, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say. So use the technology to help you out, to just come up with a very nice description of your property, right? You just obviously want to give it the right prompts. If you have 2 bedrooms, you don't want to tell it 3 bedrooms. So put the square footage, just brag about the amenities of your home. Do you have a pool in the backyard? Do you have a brand new kitchen? Whatever you think may catch the eye of a buyer or ear, right? And on that note, something I did forget to mention is, when you do your repairs, as I mentioned, depersonalize the home. I know you may like a purple bedroom or pink or yellow kitchen, That's not what most people would like to move into. So make it as bland as plain as possible. White can work, but like a gray, white, light beige, tan, whatever. Don't go too extravagant or flamboyant in the colors. You go look at some homes and you see a turquoise painted or bedroom painted in turquoise, and the other one is a bright lime green, and the other room is a purple. I get it; those are kids' rooms and kids' colors. Somebody got a pink bedroom here. Buyers don't like that necessarily. It doesn't show well. Even if they want to come in and change the colors, but what makes you think the colors you have there is going to be loved by the majority of people? And in selling the home, that's all you really want. You want it to appeal to a lot of people, and then you get them fighting over the house. That's literally what you want to do. So try to stay away from the really bright colors, um, and make it like a light gray, just you know something that can appeal to the masses, right? Then finally put the home on the market, and one thing you want to consider when you do that is preparing to show the house. So a vacant home, as I mentioned, is easier to show. A lot more people can look at a vacant home, because you're not there. A lockbox is at the front door. The agent can show the property as they desire. So vacant home is easier to show, but if you do live there, just be ready to step out on a moment's notice when the buyer wants to look at the home. That's why it's always best to not be living there, especially if you have a family. If you're a single person, then okay, you might just get up and run out. But if you have kids and they're playing around and got things messed up, an option you can do is tell your listing agent or leave a remark on the website that showings require an hour notice. So you give yourself some time to kind of clear out and move out so people can look at it. Um, but definitely weekends, you want to make sure. One thing is very inconvenient for sellers. On the weekends, the homes are not going to be accessible to you as the owner. Just to be honest, I mean, you can always reject showings, but you're just going to delay the sale process. So when you and that's just another plus with dealing with an agent, right? We have a website where people can just go request a showing, but with the for sale by owners, they need to call you, get in contact with you, coordinate the sale or the showing. It's not impossible, it's just not automatic, right? As realtors, we got what's called a going show. When you click show, it just automatically approves the showing and somebody can go view it. But for FISBO, sometimes people need to schedule appointments. That's not even too much of a barrier, because to be quite frank, with the higher end homes that go for over $1 million, people don't let everybody go look at the house. There are no going shows for the higher end homes. That's one thing I know for a fact. Actually, what they do is they require not only an appointment, maybe an hour window, but also they require a pre-approval letter from buyers, so people don't waste your time, right? So if a house is priced at a very high amount, serious buyers only. This is not it's not a museum where people come and check out what your house looks like. So those higher end homes tend to require a pre-approval letter from the buyer before they would even allow the buyer to view the property, right? So prepare to show the home, meaning, especially if you live there, be ready to jump out and leave. I've sold homes where the seller lived there. We just had to say, hey, 1 hour notice, and then the seller would tell me, hey, on Tuesdays and Thursdays I work from home, no showings on those days. So as a listing agent, you block it all out, and then the buyers request other days. what can be very tough sometimes is weekend showings if you live there. So you as the seller, there's no rule against you being there while a buyer comes in. There's a plus and a minus to it. Plus side is you are very knowledgeable about your home, so you can actually sell it better than an agent. Oh yeah, I put this. I put that kitchen there not too long ago. The solar panel I installed myself. Oh, the water heater works. You can explain to the buyer, and you can sell it to them, right? Even if they see some deficiencies, you can kind of explain what caused those things. The downside of that is some buyers don't want to be interrupted by a seller. They feel as though you're trying to conceal something or force them to buy something that they may not be interested in. So some buyers don't want to deal with a seller there. They just want their own time to look at it, process it on their own. I would be that kind of buyer. I wouldn't want to be looking at a home and somebody is constantly in my ear trying to tell me how good the house is. I would look at them like, just with some suspicion as what are they trying to sell me, what are they trying to hide. It's almost like, I don't know, maybe it's a male thing or just some human beings are like that. When I go shopping, I don't necessarily want an associate helping me out to find things. If I really need help, I'll say, hey, do you know where this item is? But I'm not anti-customer service. It's just that 9 times out of 10, if I walk into a store, I've probably written down everything I want and I just know exactly where to go and grab it and leave. So the same goes to buying a house. If I want to see it, I want to look at it on my time with my agent that I know has my best interest, and we can bounce ideas off each other. But with the seller being there, one thing I noticed, even on Saturday, was it Saturday or Sunday that just passed, 2 homes, the sellers were there. One of them, once we saw the seller and a dog in the house, my buyer didn't even go downstairs or upstairs. They just walked the main level, checked out the backyard, and they said, let's get out of here. Whereas if the seller wasn't there, who knows, they probably would have liked to explore the property some more. The other home, even though my buyer liked it, the seller was there, she sold the home to the guy. He liked it already, but we weren't able to talk as much until we got out in the parking lot. That's when we were able to talk to each other and really bounce ideas off each other. So the seller being there can be a negative. I've seen it where, as I mentioned, one of the showings on Saturday, my buyer just ran right out of the house when the seller was there with a dog. On the flip side to that, I've taken buyers to go see a property where the seller is there, and man, the buyers are so happy, like, wow, I'm glad you were here. They just answered so many questions about the HOA. The seller can tell you who lives in the community, who your neighbors are going to be, how long this thing has been installed, how long the roof is. They just answer so many questions, and the buyers are like, man, I'm so happy you were here. They got so much information from the home. So just keep that in mind. I have seen where sellers being present can be a plus or a negative. So just prepare to show the property and be prepared to exit if you're living in the house when it's time to show. So let's say you do show the property, you get some offers. The next step would be you accept offers, right? And now after you've accepted an offer, this starts a whole new process, right? But just some things to keep in mind. The time of the offer, like, you need to read that. Your agent should help you with this, but let's say, for instance, you're doing it for sale by owner. Some things you need to look for is the time to close. Just because somebody's offering you $10,000 more doesn't mean they'll close in a timely manner. So if somebody's offering me $10,000, but they need 2 months to finance this thing, that lets me know they may not be that qualified. Why do you need 2 months to finance a loan? I think 30 days is a pretty decent, is average really, as far as in closing time. Anything longer than that will raise my eyebrows. Like, why do they need so long to finance the home? Are they even a qualified buyer? You know, another thing you want to look for, seller's help. They're asking for seller's help, and because some people may offer you so much money, but in there they ask they ask for seller help. So keep that in mind. One more thing to look for in an offer is the contingencies. So if a buyer comes in and says, I want to buy this home, but it's pending the sale of my home, then is that they may offer you even 30 grand more than asking, but how long are they going to take to sell their home? What if their home doesn't sell? Then you've missed out on other good buyers that possibly could have been able to close. So just keep an eye out for contingencies when you receive offers from buyers. Um, you want to look for the time to close. You want to look for the earnest money. Earnest money is a deposit that a buyer puts down that shows intent, right? So the average is 1% of the purchase price. So if the home is going for $500,000, the average earnest money is $8,000, right? Um, Give me one quick second. Yes, so we were talking about earnest money. So earnest money shows intent. So if a buyer comes in and they offer you $10,000 in earnest money deposit, and another buyer offers you $500, they're not offering you, but they're putting it down. You can see that this other buyer that gave you 10 grand, they have more skin in the game. So that may tend to be a better person to kind of go with, not necessarily. But then you know that if they screw up this contract, you may be able to keep some of that money. Anyway, that's what the earnest money is. So you want to look out for the earnest money, the time to close, and just the way they submit their offer, right? Sometimes, let's say you got two identical offers, but one agent sends everything separately. They send the earnest money contract here, the disclosures here, just like 10 different PDFs, and it's not organized. The offer letter of intent is not in a presentable manner, or they don't even submit it with a pre-approval letter. You just know, do I even want to work with this type of buyer? But if somebody else comes in with their earnest money, just one whole PDF, and the pre-approval letter, and they give you a nice letter of intent telling you where they are, even though all things are equal, you just see that, okay, this might be a smoother transaction. And also you can, prior to you accepting the offer, what you can do is, that's why I recommend going with an agent. As an agent, what I normally do is I call the lender, because if I see the pre-approval letter, I'll call the lender and try to get a feel. The lender obviously is going to want to make sure the deal goes through, but I would like to probe and see how qualified this buyer is. You probe and you ask the lender a little bit of qualifying questions, and you can kind of get a feel. Some lenders will tell you, oh yeah, we're good to go, this thing is going to close. Some lenders may be like, we might need some seller help. So if I get the sense from the lender that this buyer might need some seller help, they're not all the way there, either credit wise or financially, then I have another buyer that is there, is not going to require seller help. Who do you think I'll recommend my seller go with? What offer do you think I'll recommend my seller select? So just different factors when it comes to accepting offers. You don't just take the first thing that pops up, right? Another good strategy in selling a home, when offers come in, is you take the offer and then now you post online, offer on hand, 7 days or deadline to you don't even say offer on hand, but people will kind of read between the lines. If you say deadline to submit offers is on Friday, you're kind of telling the public I already have an offer, right? I'm already holding something, and a bird at hand is worth two in the bush. So some buyers may want to rush you to actually accept the offer, which makes sense. You want to know why they're rushing you. Some people are military couples, they got to travel and they need to be under contract in a certain amount of time. That makes sense. But other than that, if they don't have a good reason for trying to rush you to accept an offer, you don't want to wait too long. You can let your potential buyer know, give me a few days, I'll make a decision because I have another offer on hand. But what that does is once you give a deadline to accept offers, people start calling and saying, hey, you got an offer, where do we stand? You know, you can't really disclose. You can, well, you can if you want to, but you can say, put your best foot forward. You know, I got an offer at asking or close to it or above asking, so put your best foot forward. And that can kind of create a bidding war actually sometimes. So once the offer get accepted, then you go through the process of the appraiser for the buyer is going to come out there, especially if it's a loan purchase. If it's a cash purchase, most cash buyers may not even get an appraiser. But if it's a loan purchase, the bank is going to send an appraiser out there to see if your house appraised for the purchase price. And if it doesn't, but the buyer really likes the property, then they need to pay the difference. You know, sometimes contracts fall through because you may be under contract for $500,000. The buyer may be willing to buy the house for $500,000, but being that it's not a cash purchase, they're using a loan. The lender can tell them, "Hey, I cannot qualify this loan. I don't think this house is worth this much." So that's something to keep in mind, right? Then obviously you need to make sure it passes inspection. The buyer, whether cash buyer or not, 9 times out of 10 may get an inspection. You know, unless your house is in the, you know, it's a very bad property and the buyer knows they got to put some money in anyhow. Then some buyer, especially if the buyer is an investor, they may not opt in to get an inspection. But most buyers will get an inspection. So that's why I told you be preemptive. You get the inspection, you fix if you fix everything that you need to fix. So when it's time to close, you say, hey, the property purchased, the property appraised for this much. We got the inspection, we got all these things repaired. So you as a seller, you just have a strong footing, a strong place to negotiate from, you know. And so those two things are going to transpire. Obviously, in the contract, you need to state all what you're going to leave and what you're going to take. Most sellers leave all the appliances. If you're going to take your washer and dryer, you include it in your exclusion statement. One more thing that we need to look out for is fixtures, right? Fixtures really is all based on what you negotiate. If the contract states that the seller is going to take all their draperies and appliances, then that's what they negotiated. But if they don't negotiate that, anything attached to the wall belongs to the property. It's considered real property, right? But anything not attached is considered personal property. So for the most part, the seller would have to negotiate what they're taking and what they're leaving if it's attached to the property. You don't want to have a property on the market, a buyer comes in, looks at things that are attached, and this buyer thinks they're going to get these items, then come their final walkthrough, because buyers like to do a final walkthrough maybe a day before closing or on the day of closing, and then they see that things are gone that they thought was part of the house. That can actually cause a deal to fall through. Another thing is when the inspection report comes back, some buyers may require you as a seller to repair things. If you don't want to repair anything, you need to state it up front as is sale, so you negotiate with the buyer so they know whatever you sign, that's it. We're not fixing anything, is as is. But even though it may be an as is sale, you get a bad inspection report. What you can do is offer some cash, right, to the buyer. As far as real estate commission, all commissions are negotiable, but the norm is the seller normally covers both buyer and seller commission. Because think about it, a buyer is putting 20, 30, 40,000 dollars down, sometimes even higher. You just want to help them to get to the closing table, so you cover their agent's commission, and that is negotiable, right? There is a number that is a common number, but it's illegal to say this is the number because it's negotiable. Legally, there's no price fixing, or there should not be any price fixing in real estate. So you have to negotiate that as a seller. You're not obligated excuse me, to cover the buyer's agent commission. They can negotiate, they can ask you whether you want to cover it or not. But it's an incentive for people to buy your house. If you say, oh, I'm not paying any buyer's agent commission, but your neighbor is paying, and both houses are identical, who do you think they're going to go with? You know? So that's something to keep in mind. But if your house is way better than your neighbor's property, then maybe you have grounds to stand on and say, I'm not paying any buyer's agent commission. You know, come with your best offer and we'll go from there. So honestly speaking, as an agent, here's the bottom line to it. Houses sell themselves. Houses really sell themselves. The price of the home, the location of the home, the way the home looks, the repairs that are done, or if it just fits the buyer. You know, you can have a house on the market for an extensive period of time. Everybody comes there is just leaving bad reviews about the house. Then you get a buyer like, this is the house I've been looking for my entire life. That has happened to me twice in listing properties. You know, I had a house where it was a very nice house, but the guy used some really odd colors. You know, he did like a blue, light bluish tile, and it looked nice, but you would have to like it. You know, it would have to work for you. Some of the colors inside were like brown, then like a turquoise kind of blue. You know, in another bedroom, it was just like, I see what he did. It looked nice, but it may not appeal to everybody. So it's kind of harder to sell that property. Then on top of it, he had a huge 3-car garage, right? And it was just so hard to like get it to sell. And it was on the market for a while because it was a corner lot in a cul-de-sac, and no other house had 3-car garages, right? They all had 1 or 2. So how do you price this home? Who's gonna buy it? But then, and he loved working on cars. That's why he bought that house. But he just had to move. And now the 3-car garage that bumps the price up may not be necessary for every family. You know, some people can work with 1 garage in the driveway. You know, so he had the 3-car garage in a huge corner lot and a big driveway, so you can park maybe 6, 7 cars in that area. And it really had to work for the right person. But then we were under contract with somebody. That contract fell through. Then somebody else came and it was their dream home. Oh man, I got so many cars. I like working on cars. This works perfectly for me. Boom, and we were under contract. So, you know. Same with another property I had listed in Charles County. Just the way it was an investor, the way the investor like separated the bathroom. He had the toilet here, like a half a bath, but kind of in the laundry room area, he had a shower stall. So in essence, you got a full bathroom in the downstairs level. It was a 3-level house, not necessarily a basement, but a ground level and then 2 up. So in essence, you got a full bathroom in the ground on the ground level, but the toilet is separated from the shower. It was like a weird fit, you know. It had to work for the buyer, and it was kind of hard to sell for a while. It was there for a while, but then I had a family. It was their first home, and they loved it because it was totally renovated. Everything was brand new. The bathrooms were brand new. The appliances were brand new. Maybe not the roof. Other than the roof, they did a good job fixing everything. So the buyer, that property just had to work for somebody. And when that buyer saw it, man, this is our dream home. So sometimes agents may come and tell you strategies they have. Yes, some agents work harder than others. You know, like some agents do a lot of open houses. They pass flyers around the neighborhood. They stage your property. They call all the top agents in the community to kind of let them know, hey, I have a new listing. And some agents really do try to get your home sold. Other agents just put a sign in front of your house and they get out of there, you know. So not all agents are created equal. That much I can tell you. So, but the bottom line is, regardless of how good an agent is, if the house is worth $500,000 in a very slow market and you price it at $700,000 and you go get the best agent from wherever you want to get them from, that property is not going to sell. You understand? So don't be fooled by all the game that agents try to run and tell you they can do some kind of magic to sell your home. I do get it. There are some lazy agents. For instance, I requested a showing on Sunday for a property I want to take a buyer to go see tomorrow. I'm still texting this agent to just get him to approve the showing. They're not responding. So imagine you are a seller with that kind of agent right there. They're not even responding to people who are possibly trying to go view a property. So not all agents are cut the same. That I can tell you. But the bottom line is, what's going to sell the house is going to sell itself based on how you price it, the location, the market, and then the renovations. Those are the things that are going to sell the home. The right agent might help you sell it faster because they're going to get it in front of more eyeballs during that first 2-week period. That's the make or break period when the house is brand new on the market. The longer the house tends to sit on the market, eyebrows start going up. People start asking questions like, hey, what's wrong with this house? You understand? Because the truth of the matter is, people just start worrying. They worry, is something wrong with this house? Why is it not selling? Especially if it's on a block where every other home has sold and yours is just sitting there. It raises eyebrows to where people are like, I don't know. You know, why is this home not selling? So the sooner you can sell your home, the better. But in this market, I can say a lot of houses are sitting. The average DOM, days on market, is somewhere around 60 days now. It's 56 days in some areas, 60 something in other areas. But some hot markets still sell within 30 days. But when the market was sizzling hot, the average days on the market in the state of Maryland was somewhere around 21 days in some areas, 14 days in others. You put a house on the market that's fully renovated and priced accurately, there's a bidding war. You know, people are bum rushing into the open house, and you can see them, just one agent may schedule a show and another agent. That has happened to me. I went to go show a property in Upper Marlboro one time. I had a showing scheduled. Another agent went there before me, took the keys out. which I can really report them because you're not supposed to do that, especially when it's stated on the showing time. This house doesn't permit. There's a phrase for it, but pretty much doesn't permit overlapping. That's what it's called, overlapping showing. So one buyer at a time. That property didn't allow for overlapping showings. I had the showing scheduled at 5. That seller ran there maybe before me and had the garage door rolled up and kept the key to themselves. And I still had access to it with my client. They were outside waiting on their client, and I honestly thought it was a seller, but seller's agent. But when I looked at the sign and I saw the card that she has, that wasn't the listing agent. So that's when it hit me like, oh, this is another buyer's agent, and they're trying to fight me so they can show the house to their own buyers. So that's the type of market that it used to be, where the DOM, the days on the market, was averaging 15 days, 14 days, and then as a seller, you own the world. You know, it's a seller's market. But now I see, just today I'm looking at some expireds in DC, 100 and something days. One I saw was there for 200 and something days. The market is not the same anymore. Properties are taking longer to sell. So with that being said, just to wrap it up, as a seller, pricing your home accurately is what's going to sell the house. The renovations you do, because think about it, the interest rates are so high right now, nobody wants to buy a house and have to put a whole lot of money into it. People want turnkey properties, move-in ready properties. You're not going to spend $500,000. The average price for a home in Maryland is $400,000. Washington, D.C. is even higher. Northern Virginia is also high. So you're not going to spend all that money and still have to spend 20, 30, 40 grand to get you to where you need to be as far as, okay, now I'm home. Most buyers, when they spend that kind of money, they just want to move in. Move-in ready houses. You're not going to spend $40,000 in closing costs and then you budget another 40 grand to get it repaired and get a renovation loan. For that, you might as well, it's not impossible. I've seen it. I had a buyer close on a condo. He was already a homeowner, bought a condo with me, called me a year later. Hey, I see this property. It was foreclosed on, and we had to do a renovation loan for him. So that was his third property. That's a different thing. But if it's your first home, you really want it to be turnkey and move-in ready. And also, just keep that in mind. So we're going to wrap it up right here. But let me go over the steps again. In selling your home, I would say start doing some repairs, some deep cleaning, so when it's time to sell, you don't have this huge bill of repairs that need to be done. Maintain your home periodically, so when it's time to sell, your repair cost is at a minimum. Do a CMA or an appraiser to kind of know what your home is really worth. The appraiser is more accurate and can stand in with a lender and possibly even in court. A CMA is kind of like an opinion from an agent or from yourself, right? An inspection report, I would say, is recommended if you want to know and you want to sell a good product, meaning your home, you want to make sure your home is sold properly and no lawsuits will come back to bite you. But if you don't want to know latent defects, because in Maryland and DC, you got to disclose what you know, right? So some sellers wouldn't want to go digging in for information that they may have to repair. So they just write, and you got to write a disclosure statement in Maryland, DC, and most states based on what you know that's wrong with the property, right? Calculate your closing cost. Oh yeah, one more thing. If it's a property built before 1978, you got to do a lead-based paint disclosure. So every home built prior to 1978, you need to disclose any lead-based paint contaminations. You know, if you know something, you have to disclose it. Then you need to provide a pamphlet, but that's where the agent may take care of you there. But let's say if it's after 1978, that may not be required. You either get a Realtor or you do FISBOs That's a for sale by owner. You do some decluttering, or you move out completely. You stage the property. Homes that are staged sell for higher than homes that are not staged. Then you put the home on the market. You write a compelling statement. You can even do a 3D tour. You can do a blueprint so people know the ground structure, the plan of the home. So just things to help get your home sold. You can do a video, tour of the property. Um, then while it's on the market now, you're doing your agent or you're doing open houses based on whether you have an agent or not. Um, the more flexible you are with showings, the more buyers are going to walk through your property. Um, then once you accept an offer, you hope it passes inspection, go through the appraisal, and then closing. All right, we're gonna wrap it up right there. Thanks for watching. Oh, if you are looking to sell a home in 2026, I'll leave a link down in the description below. Currently licensed in Maryland and Washington D.C. So feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.